in their local communities. And now I'd like to call on Mr. Omar al-Muqdad, who's a journalist, a Syrian refugee, and also he's living proof of that whole process because he was served by ICMC in Turkey, and then also he was resettled through Migration and Refugee Services to Catholic Charities in Little Rock, Arkansas. You're very welcome, Omar. Thank you.
Grazie Padre per le tue parole, grazie mille. Grazie a tutti. Allow me first to introduce myself. My name is Omar al-Muqdad, a Syrian journalist and a resident in Washington, D.C. I'm pleased to have this unique opportunity to be here today and to take part in this great event. I'm so honored to represent refugees of my country and everywhere in the world, and to be their honest and true voice. I hope my experience of being a refugee once will shed some light on the kind of suffering the refugees in general and Syrian refugees in particular have to endure before and after they flee their country. The person I was 5 years ago would have never imagined himself to be standing here or sitting here tonight in this position, talking to you about his experience as a refugee. But since the revolution started in my country, Syria, which later became engulfed in never-ending war and conflict, my life for sure has changed forever. Years before the Syrian uprising started, I was just a hard-working journalist, one with so many ambitions and dreams, which living under the Syrian regime made it all very hard to achieve. It was almost impossible to have the freedom of practicing my career without being constantly harassed and questioned by the authorities. At one point, I decided to establish a private newspaper and worked hard for it. But it was shut down after I wrote an article that was critical of the government or the regime. Actually, writing with my real name was a suicidal thing to do. In fact, in Syria, we don't have a freedom of the press. It's kind of North Korean regime. So what I have to do, I have to write with a pseudonym, a fake name, to sign my articles if I'm critical to the regime. So I was signing my early articles with the name Zorro. And I was really inspired by that movie. It was a suicidal thing to do, to use your name and to be critical to Bashar Assad. The Syrian regime used to imprison on regular basis anyone who would dare to criticize the regime and its institution, or if it to question its legitimacy. Unfortunately, I was one of these people that was imprisoned for speaking their mind about the regime. I spent 3 years in jail. I consider myself fortunate that when I approached the UNHCR while I was in Turkey, they helped me a lot and sent my case to the US and Canadian embassies in Ankara to be reviewed. Later, when I was granted a refugee status in the United States and arrived to America, I found myself a new home in the deep south of Arkansas. When I tell people that I went to Arkansas, I see that impression on the faces. It was really pleasant and the warm experiences. I spent the first few days for a few weeks actually, with a couple called Bitsab Margo. I really miss them. They treated me as if I'm one of their own, one of their sons. And they offered me a room in that beautiful home. And I was so pleased by the friendly atmosphere in the little town of Fayetteville. I was welcomed with open arms by everyone I met, and I became part of the community in a matter of weeks. I have nothing but great things to say about my experience with the Catholic charities and relief organizations in general. After I got the initial acceptance, the ICMC were there for me and helped to facilitate my case. They called me while in Istanbul, and I visited with them 3 times in their office. They arranged for me my pre-screening and medical test, and also arranged an interview for me with the Department of Homeland Security to make sure I am okay. The interview went really well, and it was followed by the questionnaire to see what kind of experience and qualification I got. After I was granted the asylum and arrived to the United States, Catholic charities helped me with the housing, with the furniture, with everything. They put me on the road. I was very welcomed by the Catholic Church and offered to visit and mingle the people. I was pleased to be invited to speak in San Joseph Church about my story and the conflict that was taking place in my homeland, Syria. ICMC was by my side and kept following up on my progress in on my new life until yesterday. I got emails from Jane. On my progress in my new life. I truly owe it to them for putting me on the first of the road here in the United States. Coming to the land of the free gave me the feeling of a freedom I dreamt about all my life. I found the kinds of freedom that I needed the most as a human being and, of course, as a journalist. The kind of freedom I wish upon all my people who lived most of their lives under a hostile regime and were deprived from even the minimum of human rights, and on top of it, have suffered from war, bombs, and death, and were forced to run away from it all to the unknown. Pope Francis once said, "Migrants and refugees," I quote here, "migrants and refugees are not pawns on the chessboard of humanity. They are children, women, and men who are forced to leave their homes for various reasons, who share a legitimate desire for knowing and having, but above all, for being more." Let us all come together and show our utmost support to refugees at this tragic time and work hard to bring their misery to an end. I would love to go through a lot of details here, but because we don't have time, just 7 minutes, so I will conclude here. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Omar, for bringing us the difficult experiences, but then the positive experiences that you've had. And I will bring back to Geneva the positive evaluation of the ICMC staff and share it with our Turkey Refugee Service Center as well. So thank you. We're coming close.